So for all you history buffs out there, remember it was Republicans in Congress who forced Richard Nixon out. They talked about how terrible he was. Democrats in Congress covered for Joe Biden for years. Some still are. This weekend, Democrats and their friends in the media started to understand the severity of the problem that they now face, the problem that they covered for Biden. Everything they accused Donald Trump and Republicans of doing, they're doing them for themselves. Take, for example, threatening democracy. Here's Alex Thompson about his new book on the Biden health cover-up.
One of the things that really, I think, comes out in our reporting here is that if you believe, and I think a lot of these people do sincerely believe, that Donald Trump was and is an existential threat to democracy, you can rationalize anything, including sometimes doing undemocratic things.
With us now, Ramesh Ponnuru, National Review editor, Julian Epstein, Democratic strategist, attorney, former chief counsel for the House Judiciary Committee. Gentlemen, good to see you both on set. Julian, start with you. Do Democrats now realize that the threat to democracy argument is going to be almost impossible to make?
I hope they do. I don't know if they have a lot of self-awareness. There's nothing that I see in their activity since the last election that shows a great deal of self-awareness. Of course, lying about the president's mental capacity, I can't think of a greater offense against democracy or a greater offense against the voters. The problem for Democrats is Watergate involved one person and maybe a few people around the presidency. This lie against the voters and this really sin or fraud against democracy involved the entire party. Everyone was in on it, from Obama, Pelosi, Jeffries, Schumer, on down the line. Very, very few of us, I was one of the very few, but very, very few of us stood up early.
Well, and those who were really criticized.
We were ostracized, yeah.
Ramesh, the hardest thing to do in politics sometimes is nothing. And shockingly enough, I see a lot of Republicans doing that.
Doing nothing with respect
doing nothing and allowing Joe Biden and Democrats and the media to stew in this story.
Yeah, I think this is a very bad story for the Democrats, and it is actually best for Republicans to be on the sidelines of this, partly because there's a lot of other things, of course, Republicans are busy doing since they have the trifecta of control of the government. But the Democratic, I think the backbiting is not, I think, coming to an end because they haven't really resolved any of the underlying issues about where they were positioned, about what went wrong, about who enabled what went wrong.
Yeah. I want to play the soundbite from Scott Pelley, anchor of CBS 60 Minutes, correspondent at Wake Forest University. Take a listen.
And insidious fear is reaching through our schools, our businesses, our homes, and into our private thoughts. The fear to speak in America.
Kind of like the fear people felt if they talked about COVID vaccines not working or lockdowns being bad. The fear some Democrats felt if they talked about Joe Biden's health.
Right. I mean, the lack of self-awareness in the news media is astounding to me. I mean, if the people around Biden were the Politburo, as Jake Tapper calls them, then the media were Pravda. I mean, the indictment against the news media in not going after the story aggressively. I mean, you listen to Jake Tapper talk about his first sort of argument out of the gate was, well, they were fooled by the White House. Then he sort of did this this pivot to arguing
he's humble now.
He's humble. This is false humility. You know, we should have covered it more. No, the truth is, and I say this again as a Democrat, regrettably, the reason that the media didn't cover this is because they were in the tank for Biden. They didn't want to cover it. I mean, Joe Biden didn't know in 2021 what his generals' positions were on Afghanistan. If that isn't a flag for the news media to go hard on the biggest story of the decade, namely that the president is not capable of running the country, then I don't know what is. And, you know, I talk to Democrats all the time, and they tell me they don't watch, they will not watch CNN anymore, they will not watch MSNBC anymore because they don't trust the networks. And for Pelley to come out there and say, oh, sort of make these arguments about authoritarianism, which most people don't buy, and not cop to the incredible failure of the news media, including 60 Minutes when they edited the Kamala Harris tape.
Sure.
It's astounding lack of self-awareness.
One other thing about the press that I think is important because it's of continuing relevance. We started this segment off talking about Watergate and Nixon. We know more about how the Nixon White House worked than we know about how the Biden White House worked. To this day, how were the decisions made? Why were so many of the decisions to the left of Joe Biden's record and his 2020 campaign agenda? That is something that requires more journalism. And presumably, some of these people are more ready to talk than they were before November.
You say more journalism. You brought up Jake Tapper and sort of the author of this book now trying to speak and defend the media. Here he is on PBS.
And I think that we need to be skeptical of everything that we are told by people in power. And I mean, that obviously should be the mantra of being a journalist to begin with. If your mother tells you she loves you, get a second source. Right. But we just need to remember that. Like, politicians lie. White Houses lie. Power is an aphrodisiac.
And so Julian goes, "Oh, Jesus," during that soundbite. Glenn Greenwald had a better response, okay? Jake Tapper, at the age of 56, and after 30 years in what one may loosely call journalism, pretends to have just woken up and realized what is, in fact, the first axiom of Journalism 101. Politicians and governments lie, and journalists shouldn't blindly believe them. Ramesh, though, do you see a real curiosity by organizations other than NewsNation and those in the center, ensure those on the right, but they have their own issues, of the left-leaning media to actually find the answers to the questions you asked?
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing a lot of sort of gossipy coverage of this book. I'm not seeing people asking those further questions. What exactly was the configuration of power between Ron Klain and Jake Sullivan and Anita Dunn and these other people who were the Politburo?
Okay, last point to you. Is there not a huge opportunity for one Democrat in Congress or in the Senate, some backbencher, to get up and just start filleting Team Biden?
They should.
Just politically, there's a huge opportunity.
They should, because the public will not forgive them until they cop to the lie and the fraud that was committed against the voters. And I think, again, it's an indictment on the entire leadership.
So
and I think it's time for new
why
leadership.
isn't AOC? Why isn't Bernie Sanders?
Because
why isn't somebody...
there are two phenomena inside the Democratic Party. One is groupthink, which I've written about many times. And the phenomena of groupthink is they just want to step out. And two is, increasingly in politics, we're seeing a desire more than anything else to belong to the group. And when you step out, there are now new ways of ostracizing you from the group, like social media. But Jake Tapper, I mean, it's just, I mean, he makes Ron Burgundy look like a good journalist. I mean, he sounds like a guy that is in his first year of Columbia School, of journalism school, rather.
Rule number one.
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about stuff you learn in your first week of journalism school. I mean, for him to be realizing this after 3 decades of experience, I mean, it's a gaslight that I find difficult to believe. And that's why not only is this an indictment of the Biden White House, it's a huge indictment of the news media, not this network. I will say, and this is not kissing up, this network allowed me to come on in 2023 and 2024, and I repeatedly said the Democrats have 2 problems. Biden shouldn't be running, and 2, they are way too far left on cultural and economic issues, and all the data was showing that. And this network gave me plenty of opportunity to do that. Not CNN, not MSNBC. You didn't hear it on those networks.
I would say this book is the best and most detailed look that we've gotten so far. But that in itself is an indictment of the media's previous 100%. Coverage.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.